There is a fruit native to North America that makes the blueberry look like a marketing exercise. It grows wild from the Great Lakes to the Carolinas. It contains 4 times the antioxidant power of blueberries. In 2020, the USDA ranked it first out of 276 foods measured for medicinal potency. It synthesizes its own defensive chemistry to survive pests, drought, and frost. And when we consume it, that same chemistry goes to work protecting us. Yet you have probably never heard of it. Or if you have, you know it by a name deliberately chosen to make you avoid it. Early settlers tasted it once, puckered their lips at its intensity, and branded it the choke cherry. Because it was not sweet, they decided it was worthless. They cleared it from the land to plant crops that tasted like sugar. In doing so, they eliminated the most powerful antioxidant-producing plant in the temperate world. This is the story of the berry we rejected because it demanded more of us than we were willing to give. Welcome to Lost Homestead Vault. The archive opens in the deep woodlands of eastern North America, thousands of years before the first European ship appeared on the horizon. To the Potawatomi, this berry was not a choke anything. It was sukin. To the Abenaki, it was a staple of winter survival. To the Lakota, it was a critical ingredient in pemmican, the high-energy preservation food made from dried meat and fat. The berry's natural preservative compounds prevented the meat from spoiling for years, extending its useful life far beyond anything else available. Indigenous peoples did not evaluate food by sweetness. They judged it by what it did in the body. They understood intuitively that this dark purple-black fruit was powerful medicine. Cherokee communities brewed its bark to break fevers. The Potawatomi used the berries to treat respiratory infections that settled deep in the chest. They understood empirically what modern science would take centuries to formally demonstrate. The bitterness is not a flaw. The bitterness is the medicine. This is aronia, scientifically Aronia melanocarpa, the black chokeberry. Through the 19th century, as settlers pushed westward, they ignored the aronia bushes growing in field margins and hedgerows. They wanted apples, pears, and peaches, fruits imported from Europe, cultivated to deliver sweetness and familiarity. Aronia was pushed to the margins, but across the Atlantic, someone else was watching carefully. In 1897, a Russian botanist named Ivan Machurin obtained specimens of what Americans considered a useless berry. He had no interest in sweetness. He was focused on survival. He was working in the brutal climate of the Altai Mountains, where the delicate European fruit cultivars he had been working with died in the frost. He recognized Aronia's toughness immediately. It thrived where everything else perished. He began breeding it, crossing it with mountain ash to develop larger, hardier fruits. He created Aronia michurini. While America was busy perfecting the soda fountain and the candy bar, the Soviet Union was systematically turning Aronia into a strategic crop. By 1946, it had been formally designated an official fruit species of the USSR. The Soviets planted it by the millions of bushes, producing juice, wine, and concentrated extracts for cosmonauts and soldiers. They recognized it as an adaptogen, a substance that helps the human body regulate its response to stress. Today, Poland cultivates 80% of the world's commercial Aronia supply across 60,000 acres of dedicated orchards. Commercial cultivation in Aronia's native homeland of North America did not begin until 1997. We arrived a century late to our own superfood. Why did America ignore it for so long? Because we had been seduced by a specific lie, that healthy food must also be pleasant in the way that candy is pleasant. We were trained to expect fruit to taste like confectionery. Strawberries, apples, and modern blueberries have been selectively bred across decades to be progressively sweeter, larger, and higher in water content. In that process, they shed their medicine. The phytochemicals that fight cancer, reduce inflammation, and protect cardiovascular function are, almost without exception, bitter, astringent, or sharp. Tannins, polyphenols, and anthocyanins are the plant's immune system. When you experience that dry, puckering sensation in Aronia, you are tasting the plant's defensive chemistry. You are tasting its shield, and in that moment, it is becoming yours. In 2020, USDA scientists analyzed 276 foods using the ORAC scale, the oxygen radical absorbance capacity measurement, which quantifies how effectively a food neutralizes the free radicals responsible for cellular aging and disease. Blueberries, the media's favorite superfood, scored 4,600. Aronia scored 16,000. That is nearly 4 times the protective capacity in every bite. 30 aronia berries deliver greater antioxidant protection than an entire large bowl of supermarket blueberries, and the specific compounds present in aronia matter enormously. It is particularly rich in proanthocyanidins, the same class of compounds found in red wine that supports heart health. Aronia, however, contains 10 times the concentration found in grapes. In 2008, the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences conducted a clinical trial with diabetic patients. After 90 consecutive days of consuming aronia juice, participants showed a 17% reduction in fasting blood glucose levels. In 2017, researchers at the University of Illinois found that aronia significantly reduced post-meal insulin spikes. This berry is not simply food, it is a metabolic regulator. The industrial agricultural system does not accommodate complex foods. It prefers simple commodities, things that can standardize, brand, and ship at scale. In 1948, the USDA launched substantial subsidies for blueberry cultivation. They directed money into marketing campaigns, plant breeding programs, and supply chain development. Why blueberries? Because blueberries are easy. You eat them raw, by the handful. They are sweet. They fit perfectly into the American preference for instant gratification. They built a global supply chain designed to ship sweet, soft, round berries efficiently across continents. Aronia does not fit that model. You do not eat a handful of raw aronia berries. The tannin content will dry your mouth out completely. Aronia demands a relationship. It wants to be processed, cooked into a sauce, blended into a smoothie, fermented into wine, dried for tea. It requires a food culture that values preparation over convenience. Industrial agriculture actively resists anything that slows consumption, so aronia was abandoned, denied commodity status, excluded from crop insurance, left without price support mechanisms. While blueberry farmers received government backing, aronia farmers were entirely on their own. But the erasure goes deeper than economics. It reaches into questions of sovereignty and theft. Much like wild rice and other indigenous food plants, aronia now faces biopiracy. In 2022, biotechnology firms attempted to file patents on hybrid aronia varieties, using genetic material extracted from wild plants. Without the consent of indigenous communities whose ancestors cultivated those plants, they seek to breed out the bitterness, patent the resulting sweetness, and sell a domesticated version back to a public that never stopped being entitled to the original. Resistance is growing, and it is coming from the communities who never forgot. In 2012, the Meskwaki Nation in Iowa launched a food sovereignty initiative, reclaiming aronia not as a commodity, but as a living cultural relative. They established red earth gardens, growing traditional foods, to address a community experiencing serious rates of diabetes and carrying the generational weight of the boarding school era. They are teaching their youth that medicine does not come in syrup form, that the most powerful nourishment is sometimes the most demanding. Then there is the commercial revival led not by corporations, but by individual families. In 1997, the Pitts family in western Iowa looked at their heavy, saturated soil, useless for corn, fatal to soybeans, and planted the only crop that actually wanted to be there, aronia. They did not force the land to accommodate the crop. They allowed the crop to match the land. They launched the first commercial aronia farm in the United States. Today, hundreds of growers operate across the Midwest. The state of Iowa's governor even declared September Aronia Berry Month, driven not by lobbying interests but by a genuine grassroots agricultural movement. This revival points to something important. We are beginning to tire of food that misrepresents itself. We are tired of fruit bred for shelf life and sugar content that leaves the body nutritionally hollow. We are ready for the demands that real nutrition makes of us. Aronia breaks every rule of modern industrial food. It is perennial. Plant it once and harvest for 20 years. It requires no synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. It has almost no natural pest pressure in North America because it belongs here. While blueberry farmers spray fungicides and pump groundwater to keep their plants alive in climates they were not designed for, Aronia grows in roadside ditches, unattended, producing 20 pounds of fruit per bush, 30 cups of concentrated medicine every single year, for free. The story of Aronia is ultimately the story of our relationship with intensity. We were taught to fear the pucker. We were taught to distrust the dry, the bitter, the sharp. But that puckering sensation is tannin binding to proteins in your mouth. That bitterness is antioxidant chemistry neutralizing inflammatory compounds in your blood. The plant is communicating with you. It is telling you that it is strong enough to help you survive the same things it has survived. We almost lost this berry, not because it disappeared from the land, but because we forgot how to receive what it offers. We allowed the Russians to recognize the value of our own native heritage before we did. We let the USDA convince us that only sweetness deserves investment. But the bushes are still there, in the wetlands, at the forest edges, in the backyards of Iowa, and the gardens of the Meskwaki. They are waiting for us to grow into the understanding that real food does not always flatter us. Sometimes the best things available taste like the earth they came from. This knowledge is not lost, it is simply ripening. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Lost Homestead Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom.